Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us here on Stages today. I am married. I am a baby boomer. And in this podcast, we bridge the generational gap all across the board. So I am with two millennials, and we have a guest today who is a Gen Xer. So let me introduce to you my partner, Lorena.
Hello, I'm Lorena. I'm a millennial.
Zach, our producer, give us a shout out.
What's going on? I'm Zach. I'm also a millennial, and I hope that everybody, if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, please consider clicking on the link below. There is a YouTube channel where there is video, and you can see our beautiful faces. So consider checking that out too.
Right on. And today we have a very special guest with us, all the way from France, guys. And this is our Gen Xer, John Harper. So, John, a little bit about John. Super cool guy. He's a teacher, a writer, sometimes an actor. I've seen him act. I think he's brilliant. He also has a podcast that is called Laughter on Tap. And I have listened to that, and it makes me laugh so hard. And John, I kind of want to get to know what made you decide to start a podcast called Laughter on Tap.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show, first of all. Well, I think the reason I started it is because I've been laughing all my life. And when I was living in Shanghai, I was in a show, and the stage manager, we laughed so much every night of the show. And at the end, when a sort of theatre show comes to an end, it's like a family breaking up. And the stage manager asked if I would record my laugh for her. So for quite a few weeks, I was sending various recordings of my laugh to her. And it seemed to do some good for her. So that inspired me to think maybe laughing is helpful. And then I did a laughter therapy course. And and I think for myself, laughter has been really important. I think it's something I've used to cope with all sorts of situations, and I believe in it, and so that's why I started the podcast.
Brilliant. We actually did a topic on laughter too. Zach, Lorena, and I did one, and then when we found out that you did one on laughter, we wanted to have you on. We love all the benefits of laughter. We agree with you that there's something about it. And also, John, you just have a really great laugh.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, I know you had Zach on as a guest, right? You and
Yes.
Zach. So can you guys kind of give us a little recap of what you talked about there?
Well, Zach was really good on the podcast. He tried to answer questions about how do you make people laugh, and he came from it from the improv background and tried to show that actually making somebody laugh is not necessarily about trying to be funny. It's about honesty and truth, and I think that fits in very much with myself, that we often laugh the most at real life, at things that just are totally unexpected. And I think I mentioned in one of my podcasts about when I've stupidly gone to pour orange juice into my tea or something. I just find that really funny, and I can start laughing at my own stupidity. And actually, it's been a great thing to be able to laugh even on my own, because, it's almost, I almost feel sometimes self-conscious laughing on my own, because I'm like, who am I laughing for? But it's really healthy, and it makes me savor the moment. And I keep a journal as well. And to write down things that I found funny means that I really get the full mileage out of every funny moment that happens. And I think that's been helpful. So going back to Zach, he helped us to see that honesty is linked with humor and comedy. And it also links with friendship, because honesty and truthfulness are also the foundations of friendship. So I think it really all fits together to show that laughter is not only healthy for us, but it's very good for relationships as well.
I
I
agree
love that.
100%. Right, Lorena?
Yeah, it's so good. It's
Yeah.
something that I love that you talk about on your podcast is how laughter is a form of communication. And I just think it's so like I mean, I've obviously we know that, but I've never consciously thought about it until listening to your podcast and like I know when I met my husband, like the whole weekend I've never laughed so much with another person in my life. And I have a lot of funny comedy friends, like friends that do stand-up comedy, but I had never laughed so hard. And I was like, he's Irish and I couldn't understand a word he was saying, with his thick Cork accent. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this guy, though, we just kept laughing. And like, that was our communication. And like, when you said that on the podcast, I was like, oh my God, it's so true. Cause I just like, don't know what you're saying, but I'm cracking up.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think
Very
it's
That
funny.
also
is awesome.
yeah, I think it's linked with something else that came out in another podcast was about vulnerability. And that's something else that I think is really important in terms of developing a really close relationship, is that you show yourself to be vulnerable. And when you laugh, you are exposing quite raw emotions, especially when you completely laugh and lose it totally, because
Mm-hmm.
you're showing your deep emotions, but you're also physically helpless because sometimes you can't even breathe or whatever. So it is really revealing yourself to the other person. And so in that sense, it's very strengthening and bonding between people.
That's so true, man. It's crazy because I think like when you said like laughter is vulnerability, I do think there's a little bit of a stigma of like, oh, you're always cracking jokes because you're deflecting from your emotions. But in a way, it's like I'm actually cracking jokes to like be more authentically vulnerable with somebody, or vice versa. That's a really cool way to look at it.
Yes, and I think it's not just about cracking jokes. I mean, I'm not necessarily great at telling jokes, but I definitely find the funny side of situations. And I think it's linked with mindfulness as well, because I think for me, if ever I do feel sad or angry or any of those sort of more negative emotions, I try to be conscious of that feeling as I'm having it and thinking, oh, I'm feeling sad. And just by the act of processing how I'm feeling, it takes the power away from it. And it usually doesn't take long before somehow I find something funny about that. And it means that instead of just giving into a feeling, you are processing it. So I don't any longer view it as escapism. I think at one time I was like that. I used to laugh just uncontrollably in ridiculous situations, but now I definitely have more of a consciousness of what I'm doing and thinking, and laughter is one of the best things to use almost in any situation.
Yeah, I completely agree, John. And there are times, like you said, when you're feeling sad or you have this different emotion that's more on the negative side, you can actually turn that around just by first just even smiling. And sometimes that's hard when you're really feeling a negative emotion. It's hard to just say, okay, just smile. But then you smile and then you can kind of gradually turn that around. So I completely see the benefits of feeling that emotion, speaking it out loud, and then processing it. Absolutely.
And something else that came out in one of the podcasts, we had another guest on who spoke about disasters that happen, and she spoke about the fear she'd always had of knocking her front teeth out. And when she had a scooter accident, this was also in Shanghai. Of course, she came off her scooter, and when she sort of put her hand out, she realized her tooth was actually in her hand. So the worst possible thing had happened to her. But because it was her worst fear, she just burst out laughing. It was almost like, of course that's happened. And, it's amazing that you can actually somehow find the funny side in the worst possible moments. And instead of it being the worst moment, it becomes a great story. And, I've definitely, I've been in really painful situations and still found ways to be. In fact, sometimes I had a terrible back problem at one point, and the worst thing actually is to laugh because it makes the muscle spasm even worse. But I still couldn't stop laughing, and I think back on those days when I was in so much pain as actually some of the happiest times, because I laughed so much and I couldn't speak. It was hilarious. So I really have found laughter works even in quite extreme moments.
So I did listen to one of your podcasts. Was that when you were laughing when I think you were in a car wreck and they gave you laughing gas? Is that correct?
Yeah, it wasn't a car wreck. It was just that I couldn't get out of the car because my back was so bad. And 2 ambulances arrived to take me out of the car, and because the first gas cylinder started leaking in the car, the ambulance drivers were laughing so much as well. We were all laughing; nobody could breathe, and so another ambulance arrived, and 4 of them carried me horizontally out of the car, and I was literally hysterical the whole time, and I was just loving the gas. I was loving the whole experience. It was amazing.
I don't think I've honestly had laughing gas, but when I heard your story, I was like, where do I get my hands on some laughing gas?
Yeah, for real.
Well, maybe it wasn't even laughing gas, but it worked for me, whatever it was.
It was just oxygen.
Oh my gosh. So what is another benefit that you feel is so great about laughing? Do you have any, Lorena? Because you laugh a lot. I know, because we did that whole podcast on laughing and you kind of spearheaded that one. So I thought like Lorena and John together would be great.
For me, I definitely love laughter of like, I feel like if I'm mentally, like what John said about mindfulness, like if I'm at a place where I can't find the humor in something, I've taken it far too seriously. Like life should not be that serious, which I feel like really permeates American culture right now of like everything is so serious, rightfully so, but people to the point where they can't even like have a bit of banter, a little bit of laugh about something. And like for me, even if I like did something so foolish and cringy, I just like I'm glad I did it for the fact that I can look back and like laugh at it. Like what a basic beat, like or so, like I think it's like that's healthy. It's like the healthy reflection of laughter to not take something so seriously. Like if there's always humor to be found. There's always something to tickle your funny bone. But
agreed. Completely.
That's something I'm really curious. Like John, like you've traveled so much. You're from the UK, which I feel UK and the Irish are just so good at quick-witted banter. Just so, the best at it in my personal opinion. And then and Australia and New Zealand too. Yeah. But then living in Shanghai and China, how that differed, and then in France now, how do you see laughter, banter, societal humor, and how it like changes a whole society or the feeling of a culture and the people?
I think it does. I think each country, each community, each culture has its own humor to some extent, and that's fascinating. And I think living in different places means you get to explore a different sense of humor. But I think the great thing is when you live in a country where your language is limited of the country you're living in, there's always humor. That makes it funny because you can't understand what anybody's saying. And I think just those constant misunderstandings are actually wonderful. And so even if I can't communicate with my neighbors some of the time, we just have the greatest time. We laugh so much. I laugh with my neighbors. Right from the moment I arrived here, they've invited me for dinners, and I couldn't speak any French when I arrived here. And we just had a great time. Laughter is a language in itself, and it works, and it connects people. And I just find it really brings people together in a great way. So yeah, I've loved traveling and laughing with people in all different. Sometimes I've actually if I've been in another country, I've got a group together and just got them to laugh deliberately and photograph them all laughing, and it's even that in itself is wonderful, to give them a photo of all of us splitting our sides with laughter, and it may start off fake, but actually it ends up so real because you can't believe you're doing it, and I think those moments are priceless.
I'm curious to ask, maybe this is too much, but like, is there one word that you could use to describe the feeling of laughter or the type of humor of like each place you've lived? It's really putting me on the spot, I know.
That is quite difficult too.
I don't know if I could answer it, but you seem like you could. You've written a book.
Yeah, that is quite difficult to answer, actually. I think I'd have to give that a lot more thought because, I don't want to categorize each country with one type of humor because that could also be disastrous. I think I think definitely some countries are more physical humor. Some places you go to, there's much more likelihood that people will be laughing at slapstick, people slipping over and stuff. And others, the humor is much more sort of word-based or something along those lines. So, I think, and also sarcastic. Some cultures are incredibly sarcastic, and that's something to get used to as well. I mean, I'm from the south of England, and we can be quite sensitive in the south, quite sensitive to, we're not the toughest bunch in the south of England. So, it's sometimes a bit of a shock when people are sarcastic, and so that's something to adapt to when you're in that sort of culture.
Oh. Well, that's great.
So do you guys want to try to end this with just laughing?
Let's do it.
Let's give it a try.
This has been so wonderful having you on, John. Oh. Let's try to end it with a proper laugh-a-thon.
Yes.
Let's try to do it. And everybody out there that's listening too, like, just join in, like, just kind of laugh with us. And John, you lead off with that great laugh of yours, and we'll join in.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Oh guys, that really got my belly laughing. I'm not even kidding. That was so much fun. So please join us next week. Give us a shout out below. Loved having you on today, John. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week here on Stages.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, John.
Bye-bye.